This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show. Thanks for joining me. The topic of today's show is engaging with parents and guardians. My special guest is Angelica Ugo McDestiny.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show, everyone. I'm Graham Stanley, speaking to you live from Mexico City. On today's show, I'll be discussing how teachers can best engage with parents and guardians with Angelica Ugo McDestiny. Angelica is an award-winning early childhood educator, certified life skills trainer, and a passionate family life practitioner. She's currently serving as an academic consultant with Mind-Based Education in Abu Dhabi, and she works closely with parents to support children's learning and development. With years of experience fostering holistic growth and bridging the gap between home and school, Angelica is also an author and the founder of New Breed Empowered Children Foundation, an NGO that supports vulnerable children by sending them back to school. Her dedication to empowering families and educators makes her a true leader in the field. I'll be talking to Angelica about her work and more after the Teachers Talk Radio News.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
In this week's education news, The Guardian, The Standard, and several other newspapers report that the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, pledges to tackle chronic skills shortages by abolishing the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education and replacing it with a new body called Skills England. The bill, which will transfer the functions of the Apprenticeships and Technical Education Institute, reached its second reading in the House of Commons and was passed by 317 votes to 55. In support of the bill, Phillipson said, "The skills gaps that we face in our country deny people the opportunity, the power and the freedom to choose the life that they want to live." Critics of the bill argued that the new body, Skills England, will not be truly independent and will not have the respect of the profession. Phillipson responded by saying this approach was necessary because of the urgency of the skills shortage. Periodical Schools Week carries the story of ex-schools inspectors who have launched the Alternative Big Consultation on Ofsted report cards. Former senior officials behind the Alternative Big Listen last year fear that current proposals to change the inspection system are being presented as take it or leave it. Frank Norris and Colin Richards have therefore created the Alternative Big Consultation to independently gather opinions on plans for new report cards. The survey, which launched this week and closes on April the 4th, will run alongside Ofsted's own official 12-week consultation, which closes on April the 28th. The Alternative Big Consultation comprises the same questions as the government's own consultation on the plans, but also asks respondents if they believe the proposals are fit for purpose. Many teachers and school leaders have expressed their view on the proposed report card model that it's hardly an improvement and contains many of the weaknesses of the previous system. Also in the news this week, the Daily Express covered a story with the title, "Save Our School Playtime." It went on to explain that experts warn of dire consequences as the break times in schools are cut. A report by the Raising the Nation Play Commission found outdoor playtime at school is being squeezed out of children's lives and must be restored. The Guardian carried a story under the headline, "Ministers urged to add audio books to England's new schools curriculum." A poll by the National Literacy Trust found that children's enjoyment of listening to audio and podcasts had risen compared to the previous year, overtaking their enjoyment of reading for the first time since the charity began asking about audio in 2020. The charity said it was therefore advocating for increased access to and a broadening of the variety of reading formats available to pupils, to include audio. Jonathan Douglas of the NLT stated, "In recent years, we've seen a steady rise in children's enjoyment of listening to audio and uncovered the myriad benefits it can bring, from sparking a love of reading to deepening learning and boosting well-being." PES Magazine reported this week that primary school PE training was woefully inadequate. As reported to MPs, the chief executive of Youth Sport Trust called for PE to become a core subject to drive up standards and improve fitness. Giving evidence to the Commons Culture, Media and Sport Committee, Ali Oliver called for PE to become a core curriculum subject with much higher status, and she told the committee that training problems were exacerbating the situation where there were 41,000 fewer hours in 2020-23 compared to 2011 and 12. Less than half of children are getting what the chief medical officer recommends as the minimum amount of activity. More worryingly, we know that 30% of children get less than 30 active minutes a day. LBC News reported that a teacher was sacked after a joke about whacking a pupil over the head was misunderstood. Lakshmi Subrian, who had taught for over 35 years, was sacked after a school child who spoke English as a second language misunderstood the comment. The teacher was dismissed from Gilbert Colvin Primary School in Ilford, East London in 2023 following the incident. Miss Subrian took the school to an employment tribunal, claiming the remark had been made in jest while teaching Year 6 pupils and preparing them for their maths SAT exam. Speaking at the disciplinary hearing in July 2023, she said the child's decision to continue attending her after-school club showed they had not been that upset. However, she lost the appeal. Teachers' unions supporting Miss Subrian argue that this case adds to the vulnerability many teachers feel when a single ill-judged remark could end a career. And finally, a piece of research by the British Educational Research Association. Like many pieces of research, it shows something we might have always suspected was true. In their paper, A Century of Educating Britain's Political Elite, Privilege Masquerading as Meritocracy, they show how Oxbridge and private schools, called in Britain public schools, dominate the selection of cabinet ministers and prime ministers. Oxbridge educated 14 of 21 prime ministers between 1922 and 2022. Unsurprisingly, they conclude that the concentration of elite formation systems raises concerns that their graduates will suffer from groupthink. Analysing a series of important decisions made across the 20th century, it seems certain attitudes, such as the necessity to accept neoliberalist economics, the importance of Britain as a world power, and above all, the acceptance of class privilege itself, go unchallenged. Well, there's a surprise. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News, brought to you by John Gibbs.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm very happy to have with me today my special guest, Angelica Ugo McDestiny. Angelica, thanks so much for joining me. Can you tell everyone where you're speaking from?
Hi everyone, I'm speaking from Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. That's where I live.
Fantastic. What have you been up to today?
Today there was a bit busy for me. I had some meetings in the morning. Actually went to church and just came back to settle in for this show.
Wonderful. And as usual with my guests, Angelica, I'd like to ask you how you became interested in and involved with education. So, where did the journey start for you?
Okay, my journey in education started like over 10 years ago, but I didn't imagine myself in the regular classroom because I have a background of business, women empowerment, clean energy, but I had this knack about the way children were learning. So at that time, I was working in a social enterprise called Solar Sister. It's a social enterprise from the US. I was back home then in my home country, Nigeria. So I was working with them, but I had this knack about how children were learning and the things I believe they should learn, apart from the academics, the maths, the English, and all of that. So I once in a while I would do workshops and trainings. And I now saw an opportunity in a children's developmental center that supported children in their learning, different from the things that they do in school. There were things like team building, supporting the children with their life skills and discovering the talents that they had. So I actually joined that organization. It's called Oakley and Olivia Developmental Center for Children in the city of Port Harcourt. So I joined them as one of their program coordinators and teacher. And I eventually headed one of the departments because I started developing curriculums to support children in their life skills. So that was how I found myself in education. So by the time I left my home country and moved to the UAE, in the process of working with those children, one of the things I noticed was that most of the children who were struggling, I realized that most of them didn't have a very strong foundation in their early education. So that was what drew me to early years education. So as at the time I wanted to move to the UAE, I did a diploma program called Montessori. So I did a diploma program called Montessori Diploma for early years learners, which broadened my view about education, about young people learning. So as I moved to the UAE, I started working in different nursery settings. So that's my journey and my story.
Wow, that's quite different to, I think, probably every guest I've had on so far. It's very different. Did you ever think you might end up working in education, in teaching when you were younger?
No, when I was younger, no, I will be honest, I never envisioned myself, being a teacher. Like now, where I work currently in the UAE is mind-based education. Similar to what I was doing back home in the Children Developmental Center, I support children. I work as an academic consultant with them. So I support children in their learning and in their development, and as well work with their parents to support their learning and also to, harness the skills that those children have. Yes.
Fabulous, fabulous. And before we move on to the main topic, I'm just like to explore a few other things. One of them is what is the education system like in the UAE, and how does it compare to your home education system? What are the differences? What kind of things are have caught your attention about it?
Yeah, there's so much difference in the sense I will begin with the people. I begin with the people, the
Yeah.
culture. You have people from different races, different tribes, and all of that, especially with the teachers as well, with diverse experiences. And you have the 21st century teaching being used in the different educational sectors, and as well as in the different settings that I've worked. But I have worked because in the UAE it's a little bit different. In the UAE, we have the early years in a different setup, and the primary and the secondary in a different setup. So my experience as an educator in the UAE is specifically in the early years setup, and which is also very amazing, different from what I saw, back home in my home country, the way nurseries are set up. So it's either is a British curriculum nursery, or it's a Montessori, or it's a Reggio Emilio, or it's an EYFS nursery setting. So these are the different earlier setting we have here in the UAE. Yeah.
Great. And what was it about Montessori that appealed? What did you see in that that you thought this is something I think I can really get behind?
Yeah, because I love the fact that the founder herself, Maria Montessori, was a medical doctor. So she brought that experience of child development into the Montessori curriculum. And all the activities are basically practical life activities that supports children's holistic development. And, things that children, especially in the practical life area, where children get to engage in activities that you find in daily activities that people perform in their homes. And also that the activities allow the children to self-learn, to learn by themselves, with just the teacher, that's the director, supporting what the child is trying to explore in his or her environment. So that was one of the things that attracted me to Montessori, the fact that especially that Montessori has specific materials that support children in the different areas of learning, from practical life to sensorial to understanding the world and the different areas of learning. So that was actually what, inspired me in being a Montessorian. Yeah.
So there's a lot more emphasis put upon self-learning, on autonomous learning.
Yes.
Yeah. And as I understand it, which brings us nicely to our main topic, I think parents and guardians are a lot more involved in Montessori's method than you'd normally find in traditional education. Is that right?
Yeah, but not just in Montessori as an early years educator, even the EYFS curriculum encourages partnership with parents. I
Right.
mean, as an educator, for me, across board education, both from the nursery to the primary to the secondary school, partnership with parents is key. Why
Yeah.
is that key? Because the parents are able to help us educators to support the children better, because first of all, they are the parents of these children. They know these children, and bringing them to school, we want to harness and bring out the best in these children. So it's important that whatever it is that we're doing in school is able to be transferred back to their homes, and their parents are able to implement those things, those strategies that we're using to teach them in school, to make sure that these children, that the things they're learning in school doesn't just end in school, that the learning also continues at home.
Right. Thank you. And do you think there is a kind of disconnect usually between what happens in school and what happens at home? And most parents and guardians are kind of not as involved as they should be when it comes to education with children?
Yeah, some parents are not, what's the word now? Some parents are not so involved when it comes to, that's why, for example, in the early years, when the children are not supported properly, the effect will show by the time the child moves from the nursery and goes to primary, and you find out that some things the child is not meant to be struggling with, which is something the parents should have observed at an early age and at early stage to begin to deal with those things before the child got to that stage.
Right. And do you think that's the crucial age, sort of early primary, when they start primary? Is that when most attention needs to be done? Or is it something that you think parents need to keep being engaged with their children's learning, what's happening in school, as time goes on?
It's something that parents should start early. It's not, you don't have to wait till the child gets to primary school. No. From the moment you start sending that child to that center for learning and the child is away from you, is the time you begin to observe, inquire with the parents, inquire with the teachers, what is going on, in the life of your child. Like for every time a new child is brought into the setting, we are able to assess the child. Where is this child? Is this child meeting the milestone for its age and development? And if the child is not meeting, we are able to share those information with the parents and begin to, design a plan on how to support that child at that time. So it's something that needs to start early. From the moment the child leaves home, goes to any early year center to begin learning, the parents are to be involved in that child's learning.
Yes. And perhaps you could share with us any observations you've made about children that you have come across that perhaps parents weren't paying particular attention to. Do you have any kind of anecdotes or any experience of identifying children that perhaps could have been given a lot more support than they had been when you first came across them or when they first came to the centre?
Yeah, I've met children like that in the past who, based on their age and stage of development, some things that they should be able to do cognitively, they are struggling so much in those areas. And when I started doing the assessments with the child and working with the child, I realized that at the early stage, the parents didn't pay attention to those issues that the child was having then. For me, I felt probably they felt that the child, I don't know what that that the child was going to perform a magic or something, would just all of a sudden get to do and be able to do those things. Now, at the time that the child is supposed to be able to do those things, the child is struggling cognitively to be able to do those things like mental maths and all of that. So now we're now going back to the basics to be able to support that child. And so far, the child is doing great, and he has surpassed what the parents were hoping that he was going to do.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
What about things such as special educational needs? Are they identified when the children go to the centres, etc., at this point?
Yes, that's one of the things that in the UAE we're very big on inclusive education, that children with special needs are part of the regular classroom and they are supported in a very special way with experts in those fields supporting them in their learning. So yes, because for me also as an educator, it's important that we also have them in our classrooms. Why? Because these children who are not special needs children should be able to accommodate them, be able to work with them, and be able to relate with them as normal individuals will relate with others. So here in the UAE, inclusive education is key. And the government as well supports that as well.
Right, that's good to hear. And I'm guessing for the majority of teachers, Angelica, the most contact they'll have with parents and guardians is during parents' evenings and perhaps when it comes to sharing reports of progress about their children. And it's perhaps the school leaders, the school heads that engage more with parents. Do you think this is the case in general?
No, I don't think I think it depends on the setting and the school. Yeah, because in the different settings I've worked, yes, we have parents' evening whereby parents come in and we share the progress report of their child. And apart from that, we have like apps that we use daily to be able to send reports, a daily report of the child's progress and how the child is evolving in the classroom. So I think it's peculiar to different schools and different settings, but the settings that I've worked in, we're able as teachers to have access to the parents, have meetings with the parents, even when it's not parents' evening, and there is something that we need to communicate with the parents regarding the child. We're able to, the leadership is able to put across a call to the parents and organize a meeting to come in to discuss whatever it is that needs the parents to be informed about. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about this daily report? That sounds like something that could be quite time consuming for teachers to prepare
Yeah.
and organize and to send. And
Yeah.
also, are there any follow-ups by parents? Do parents get in touch with teachers about the reports that are sent?
Yes, especially in the early years, in the nursery setting, we do that on a daily basis, whereby the activities that the children are doing, we take pictures. The apps are in such a way that we put in information based on what activities we carried out, what is the theme of the month, which area of development did we focus on, and pictures of the children doing those activities. And because they are young learners, we have their meal times and we have their prep time, their sleeping times. So we put all of those information for the parents to know that this is actually today's routine for their child, what the child has learned, what the child is going home with, as in what the child have learned for the day, and if the child was able to have his meal or not have his meal, and if there are any health issues, all those things are reported on a daily basis, and the parents respond on the app as well and make their comments if there is anything they want your attention on. Yeah.
Do you think this kind of attention, daily reports, etc., can be done at other ages as well, or is it best at this age group?
I think it can be done in other ages. For people who are in when they move from the nursery to primary school, the first 3 years of primary school is key. That's key stage 1. So I think it's also important that such reports are done, because these are also the very formative age of the children after they've transited from the nursery going to primary school. So, and especially also for parents who are very busy because of the kind of work that they do. So it also keeps them abreast of what is going on in the life of their children. Yeah.
Right. And what about later years when it comes to the teenage years, for example? Do you have any knowledge or know of any kind of similar engagement with parents and guardians when they're adolescents?
My experience working with teenagers was basically back home in my home country, that I worked with children in secondary school, whereby we had a lot of workshop in the center, and we also went to the schools to have workshops for them around life skills education and helping them discover their strengths and their weaknesses and how to channel, those things to the things that they are passionate about in life, and also about building value and character for themselves. So, and in those times, it's their parents that enroll them. So we're able to send feedbacks and reports on, because I have a particular child that I always like to share her story, because when she came to the center, she had her vision and things that she wanted to do, contrary to what her parents wanted. So I was able to communicate with her parents and, make her parents understand who she's becoming, and for them to allow her to be able to run with her dreams and run with her visions, which for me was valid. All that she needed was guidance. And I'm happy to say that today she's a pharmacist. She went to one of the universities in the UK, I'm not sure which, but today she's a pharmacist and she's pursuing that vision. One of the visions she had was to have a center where she's able to support people medically, in people who are less privileged, who are not able to afford medical care. I don't know if she has started that part, but I'm happy that today she's a pharmacist.
That's a great thing to know about tracking the progress of someone. It's really good. So Angelica, if teachers listening are looking to do something similar to engage parents and guardians in their own classes more than they are doing at the moment, what do you propose in practical terms if they want to involve parents and guardians more in the learning cycle? Do you have any suggestions for them? Because what you've talked about is obviously looking at something that teachers do because there's a whole sort of system in place where you
Yeah.
work for that. But if that system isn't in place, are there things that they can do on their own, teachers who want to become more involved in this? Or
Yes, when you're working in a setting, every setting has their vision and their goal and how they want to interact with parents. So I would always suggest to any educator to always work in line with their line supervisors, and share their desires and their plans and what they believe should be ways that they should be able to support their learners different from what every other person is doing or what the school believes should be done. Because for me as an educator, I am a lifelong learner. I've gone on out of my way to take courses that has to do with parenting, family life, courses that has to do with parenting, family life, to be able to support, the parents that I work with their children and be able to also contribute that to any setting that I find myself. Because the truth is, when we think of parents-teacher engagements, partnership is key. When I say partnership is key, what comes to my mind is when someone goes into a business partnership, there are terms and conditions, and every party has a role to play to make that business successful. Now, the business here is the child, and the teacher and the parents are in partnership. And the terms and condition is that we support these children to grow holistically, whole children, rounded children, who are going to be well-rounded adults to be able to impact their world. So for me, if the school where I find myself or the setting where I find myself do not give me the access to have access to parents, I should be able to share the idea with my line supervisor, the need for us to be able to have access to parents, to be able to, not just teach these children, but truly inspire and impact their lives. And at the end of the day, these children would look back and are grateful that they were able to go to the schools they went to and able to encounter the educator that they encountered. Yeah.
great. You've mentioned the daily reports and some other things, but one thing that was tried at a school where I worked at was something called open classes, where
Okay.
teachers, in my case, it was English language teachers,
Okay.
they invited the parents to join a class, and the parents came and stood at the back of the upper primary class and observed the teacher teaching.
Okay.
And the benefit of doing this was that it demystified the process for a lot of parents. And afterwards, they had a much better idea of what the kids were learning and how they were doing it, what happened in the classes, etc. And one of the impulses behind this, Angelica, was because some of the parents had complained, or maybe not complained, but it said that when they asked what their children what they'd done in class that day, the kids would say, "Oh, we played a game," or "we sang a song," or they weren't able to say what they'd learned or what they'd actually done. And the parents were actually concerned that the children weren't learning as much as they thought they might be. And after this type of open class, this wasn't the case, and so many more parents understood what was happening. I don't know if you've ever come across this or anything similar before.
Yeah. I laugh. Why I'm laughing is because I actually did an article on my LinkedIn page
Did
about
you?
learning through play. Because most times
Ah,
people in the earlier setting, the UFS curriculum is learning through play. The things that we teach the children, from the maths to the English to understanding the world to literacy, is through play in a fun way and still educational. And most people think that the children are just playing. They're just playing, climbing. They don't understand that the climbing has a way to affect their physical development. The singing is enable them to develop their literacy, their understanding the world. So I actually did an article on that, explaining to parents and to people that they are not wasting their time, that these children are learning, they are learning based on their age and stage of development. That's why it's play, but it's learning, because in doing all of that, they are developing cognitively, they're developing physically, they are developing. One of the things I'm also big on in early years is PSCD, which is personal, social, and emotional development. All of those all are going on in our singing, in our dancing, in our writing, in our building blocks, in the constructions that are going on. The children are learning, So yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand.
Wonderful. Yes. I guess it's because many of the parents, when they were at school, they had quite a strict, very kind of unplay-like atmosphere,
Exactly.
disciplined kind of education. And because of their experience, it's difficult for them to get their heads around a different type of learning where there's a lot more play involved. Is that the
Exactly.
case, you think?
Yes, I think so, because people think that play is just a way of people passing time. And let's even think of it like, as adults, I mean, imagine bringing a little bit of play in our workplace to make people a little bit relaxed, not so stiff. You could imagine how it's going to affect productivity. I'd shared that with someone once. You can imagine that in every office, it's not just your break time to go eat and come back to the classroom again, that you could play maybe a sport or something, to relax your nerves a bit and also think, and reflect on the day, not just sitting down in the cafeteria and just having a cup of coffee or eating something, but, really playing, So it's not just for the children. I also recommend, if possible, we could have that in our workplaces. I mean, it will boost our energy as we work. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there is this, I don't know if you've come across it, this term gamification that
Gamification, yeah.
is all about trying to make it could be work, could be education, more fun. Is that the kind of thing that you wrote about, or is that a bit different to what?
No, it's different. No, it's not what I wrote about. No.
So, could you explain a little bit more about the article that you wrote about playful
Okay.
learning? Or
Yeah, the article it's just simply about, educating parents, carers, and people that play is actually learning. And for children in early years, that the different activities they engage, from role playing to dancing to climbing, is all part of their development and all part of their learning, because it enables them to develop specific areas. Like, for example, you have a child who is 3 years old, who is supposed to be able to climb the stairs without support, and the child is not doing that. You have to begin to think of activities you can engage the child to do, because it's part of the things the child is supposed to be able to do at that age. And also, for example, you have a child who is not able to catch a ball at 3 years old. The child is supposed to be able to do that. So you have to begin to think of activities to support that child in a playful way. You could be outdoor activities whereby you're throwing the ball in a close distance with the child and trying to help support the child in climbing stairs, or also support the child in climbing slides or other outdoor activities that we have in the different centers. So all these things are done through play and is intentionally done to be able to support different areas that we need the child to develop. So that you see the children running, singing, shouting, scribbling all over the place, it has something that is doing regarding their learning. So that was what the article is about.
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What about teachers who say they would be a bit nervous about all of the things that you've described because of classroom management concerns? What would you say to those teachers, and how would you persuade them that that isn't a concern?
When it comes to classroom management, I mean, based on the number of children that you have, you always have someone to support you in the class. And in the process of doing that, if you have any child that it's a bit of concern for you regarding behavior, it's something that you address with the parents or with your line supervisor. And if it's a child that is a special needs child, there's always an extra support for children like that to be able to, learn at their own pace, and so that it doesn't also affect the learning of the other children in the classroom. So when it comes to classroom management, it's something that every educator that I know should be able to have a plan and have a way to be able to support the different learners that they have in their classroom.
Right. Good advice. Another thing that we did together at the school that I mentioned earlier, when I was a senior teacher there, was we collected students' written work and put it together in a digital magazine, along with student drawings and other things about the school in general. And this was shared with students, all of the students in all of the classes, with the teachers, but also with the parents and guardians. This really helped them see what was going on, see the bigger picture, if you like, of the activities at the school and what everyone was doing, and also get the opportunity for them to read some of the work that the students were doing. Have you an experience of this, either in your own experience of other teachers doing something similar?
Yes, I have experience with that. In one of the settings that I work with, we had what we call the photo journal, whereby the different activities that the children do, we take pictures, and the ones that they created, we're able to put them in that journal. And at the end of the term, the children were able to go home with that to show the parents what they've been able to do that school term. Yeah.
What about other things that perhaps teachers can do apart from what I've already mentioned? You know, the idea of daily updates, open classes, sharing students' work. Are there any other things that you think can be other activities or other things that teachers can do in order to come closer together to parents and guardians and help the students?
Yeah, in one of the settings I worked as well, we also had what we called the weekly newsletter, whereby we share the different things the children are learning in school, based on the theme of the month and what the lesson plan for that week covers and what they should expect in the coming week. And also because in the early years, we do a lot of role playing, and at times parents are informed through that newsletter, things that we need the children to come with, especially if maybe something that we're trying to do in the area of recycling. We would inform the parents to bring materials that they've recycled from their home to be able to do the activities we want done in school. So yeah, that's one of the things that we also do to, be able to connect with our parents, and also create opportunities whereby we have, like in the UAE, we have different events, which brings an opportunity for parents to come into the school. Like we have the National Day, we have, because it's a multicultural place, we have people from different countries, the Chinese, the Indians, they have their celebrations, and we do all those things in the settings, and it gives parents the opportunity to come in and for us to interact with them and for them to see, what we are doing. So for me also as an educator, I believe every educator, every teacher should also not just be a teacher, but also an inspiration and also as a coach to these children. Why do I say so? Because we spend more time with these children, and we're able to imprint in their hearts things, and that normally maybe their parents will not have time for. But as a teacher, we are able to we assess these children, and we know their strengths and their weakness, and we're able to encourage and inspire them, knowing that beyond the sky is their limits to become anything that they choose that they want to become. Yeah.
Very inspiring. And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about some of the activities that role playing was something that you really did a lot of. I'd love to hear more about that, how you approach role playing with the children, etc.
Yeah, I mean, basically role playing in the role play area, we have like a setup that looks like a kitchen, We have a setup that looks like a hospital. We have a setup like looks like a salon, and we have children dress up in those costumes, and they pretend like they're a doctor or they're a nurse. And we have ones that are kitchen, they pretend that probably they are cooking, and or maybe they are sitting down and they're having afternoon tea with their friends. So it's basically the things that they see around them, they are able to do those things by themselves without the support of an adult or the teacher, anyways.
And how do the children react to that? Is it a popular
Oh,
activity?
yeah, they love that a lot. I mean, they love that a lot. I've worked in a setting that has a specific room for role playing with the different costumes, to the kitchen, to construction, to all of that. And whenever it's time for that session, the children are excited. They all line up and they get in there, and you see some of them pretending to be mothers because we have a session that has, babies, doll babies with the beds and all of that. So they try to kind of do what they see in their homes, or when they go shopping. We have a section that has like as if a grocery shop, and the children come pushing their carts like that they're going grocery shopping, and they're paying with the fake monies and all of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And do you ever get parents involved in that? Do they ever experience that or see the children role playing, or is it
Yeah,
separate?
the parents come and see that if, for example, is the closing time, and the timetable says that the children are there in that area, and the parents could come in to the role playing area and they see what the children are doing, and they love it.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, you touched upon sort of special events, and in my experience, things like plays. I've come across song contests and other performances, for example,
Yeah.
not only live, but also things that are videoed. I've been involved in a situation where primary students actually adapted, with the help of a teacher, little sketches related to Shakespeare, and they were videoed and then shared, and it was like a competition for the best video
Okay.
performance and stuff. I don't know if you have any other ideas or any things that you have been involved in related to performances or this kind of sharing videos and stuff.
Yeah, not anything about sharing videos. No, not for early years. Because another thing about in the earlier setting, when it comes to safety, you have to get permission of the parents to be able to use their children's pictures or whatever you want to do.
Yes, of course.
So when we have those special events, they are live events. Like there are no video recordings except if the parents want to record their own child. So it's normally things like the children will perform a song or recite some of the things that we're teaching them in the class. So they just come on stage and they recite the songs individually or in a group, or certain words we're trying to teach them in school. They come up to recite those things. And for example, if it's Chinese New Year that we're celebrating, we decorate the school, using Chinese, their flags, things that represent their culture and all of that. And we try to teach the children one or two things, that they could say. And that's basically that. So yeah.
Yes, when I mentioned the videos, as well as
Mm.
the student work that we shared as well, none of the students' work or no video recordings or even audio recordings, which is something that I've been involved in the past, putting together a radio show, for example, would have been carried out without getting parental written permission to do
Okay.
so. And not only permission from the parents, but making sure that the children were okay with this as well. That idea of safeguarding and getting permission is so important to do. It can be something that is difficult, it can take a lot of time, but it's so
Yeah.
important to get that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it is difficult if you have some of the children who want to be involved and some of the parents who don't want their children to be
Children to be
involved.
involved, exactly.
But then when it comes to things like video recording of a performance, etc., you can always get the children who don't have the permission from their parents to be involved or to be actually on camera. They can be assistants, they can hold the camera, they can be
Yeah.
the directors. etc.
Okay. Yeah.
So that is a way that teachers can do that. But that is an important point to make, isn't it?
Yeah.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So, Angelica, we've talked quite a lot about engaging parents and guardians. Is there anything that we related to that topic that we haven't yet touched upon that you'd like to talk about that you think would be important for teachers listening to know about?
Yeah. One of the things I'm very passionate about, as an educator as well is, character building in children, character education, apart from, having to teach these children the various subjects that we teach, helping them in their development, but, to build these children to be children of character. And, I find myself in some of the children, the older children that I work with, that away from, supporting them in their academics, I go away to talk about them being people of value, having value for who they are, because value is what defines a person. And I try to have conversations around that area, which is key, because your value defines who you are. And being able to help children to be able to discover this will go a long way to guide them in the decisions they make and the people that they relate with. So I'm very big on character education and life skills education, whereby children are equipped with the life skills that they need when they leave school. So I believe that every educator should be able to bring in these tools in their classroom while teaching. Yeah.
Yes, no, that sounds great. When it comes to character building and values, what kind of things do you do with the children? You mentioned conversations, but apart from
Yeah.
conversations with them, either individually or in group, are there any
Mm.
other activities that you can do to show them the kind of things that they need to know about?
Yeah, like books, I read books to them that has to do, books that tells a story about the need why someone needs to have a good character. I also share like worksheets for them to discover their own strengths and their own character values that they need to have. So these are the two ways I try to do that with the children, through books and videos, and also worksheets that helps them to find out what values that they have and what values they need to have that would transcend them in life.
Interesting. Yeah, of course. The value of books, so important, and reading as well. You mentioned life skills. What kind of life skills would you like to break that down into the kind of things apart from character and values? What kind of things do you think that term life skills encompasses now? What kind of skills do children of today need that you would help suggest teachers focus upon?
Okay. For me, emotional intelligence is key, is a life skill. Children being able to manage their emotions and be able to understand the emotions of the people around them. I mean, their friends and their fellow classmates. So it's important that children are emotionally aware of themselves, self-awareness. That's a life skill. Even some adults are still struggling with their own emotional intelligence. So having children learn that at an early age is very important. So apart from that, children do activities in school in groups. That's team building. That's a life skill because they need it when they leave school to work with others. Children also, now we're in the social media age. So one of the life skills is to be able to teach children how to manage social media and not allow social media to manage them. So one of the skills, again, that children need is time management. We're able to begin to intentionally teach them how to manage their time, plan their time, have a schedule for themselves, have a timetable of the things that they need to do. So there are so many different life skills that, children can begin to learn at an early age and becomes a habit for them that when they become adults, they are not struggling with those things. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And I guess when it comes to emotional intelligence, empathy is so important, isn't it? Being able
Oh,
to
very
empathize with the other
exactly.
children, to understand what you say and do, put yourselves in the shoes of
Others.
of the other children, of others.
Exactly.
Yeah. How would a teacher go about trying to model that or help children understand that, do you think?
Okay, for me, I remember one of the things I do in my classroom in the earlier setting, whereby when my children come in the morning, I have different emojis for them. I have crying, I have sadness, I have love, I have smiling, I have hug. So when they come in the morning, they go and they pick. That shows me already how the child is feeling, and they stick it to their name. So throughout the day while I'm teaching, I'm observing the child, his emotions. Is he following? Is he okay? And most times I'm able to talk with the child one-on-one, like what happened the previous day, if there is anything that is of concern that could need the parent's attention, or even my line supervisor to see, what hear what this child is saying, sorry. So for me, I do that in the early years because some of them might not be able to express, but with pictures and images, they are able to tell you how they are feeling. So I'm able to do that with them. So for other educators who might be working with older children, I mean, a child could walk into your classroom and you know whether if the child is happy or sad, and you would always like, how are you doing? And when I ask someone that, I'm intentional because I actually want to know how you are feeling, because the child's emotion will contribute to whether the child will be able to focus to learn or not focus to learn.
Yes, that's really interesting to hear you talk about that, Angelica. And
Thank you.
you mentioned, for example, we live in the age of social media now, and children are exposed to that,
Oh,
the
yeah.
internet, telephones at a much
Mm,
earlier age than
yeah.
perhaps they should be. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of parents, for example, end up giving quite young children mobile telephones. The reason for that often is it has good intentions because they want to be in touch with their children when they're not around, etc. But what's your opinion about this type of phenomenon, and how can teachers help parents with that, help the children with that? What kind of things can they do?
For children, for me personally, I don't subscribe that children should have phones at an early age. Why do I say that? As a parent as well, not just as an educator, as a parent as well. I have two children, and for me to be able to reach out to the younger one, there is a landline in the house. So not necessarily mobile phone. Now, if you need to talk to your child, I mean, if the child is in school, you can reach the child through the school. If the child is at home, you can reach the child through a landline. That is just to make calls. You're not going anywhere on social media, just to make calls. Hello, um, what are you doing? I need you to do this. Okay. And now they have tablets and laptops because they use it in learning. As a parent and as an educator, you should be able to program you and put restrictions on your child's laptop and tablet to be able to know what the child is viewing, apart from what the child is supposed to do with the tablet or the laptop. And you should also be able to program the laptop or the tablet that at a certain time, the tablet shuts down and the child is not able to use it, because this is what I did for my children, so that at a specific time, even if they try to on it because it's programmed, it wouldn't on because their screen time for that day is over. So it's something that parents, need to be intentional about to minimize the children's screen use and how much exposure they have with social media. Because that's why it's important that as a parent and as an educator as well, that we support parents to be able to manage this and try to get the children engaged. That's why most schools have extracurriculum activities that support children to do other things apart from their academics, to build the skills and the talents that they have in sports or in other areas that they love.
Yes, important. At what age do you think, personally, either as a parent or as an educator, that children should be allowed to have access to mobiles, for example? Difficult question,
That's
isn't
a
it? But
that's a
it's
tricky
one
one.
it's one that all parents have to kind of grapple with. And
Exactly. It's kind of a tricky one because
there's often peer pressure, isn't there, from,
exactly there are
the
times
children
peer
coming home
pressure.
saying, "Oh, my friends have all
Friend
got
has
mobiles. I'm the only one in class without a mobile." And you don't want to kind of
exactly.
have your children feel like they're missing out.
Exactly. So that's why I said it's very tricky. But I believe that every family has a culture. As a family life person, every family has a culture, and it's not about what the other family is doing. It's about what is the culture of our family, what is the vision of our family, what are our rules, what are the things that we abide in. So if he comes back from school and tells me his friend said, "Oh, that's good," but you know that it's when you're 12 or when you're 13 that you would get a phone. So it's I can't say that this is the age. So, but for me, it should be something that the parents on their own should decide. Why should this child have a phone at this age? Does he need it? What actually does he need that phone for? So for me, I have a 12 years old, he doesn't have a phone, and I'm not intending to get him one.
What age do you think you would get him the phone or allow him to have the phone? And has he come to you already saying that his friends have phones?
Um, no, he didn't come to me because already we've discussed it already, and I told him that he's not getting a phone until we didn't really agree on an age because he has a tablet which he uses, and we all know what he does with his tablet, his schoolwork, and because he likes gaming, so he's tried to do Scratch to design his own game. So um I don't think we've decided the actual age we're gonna get him a phone, but right now he doesn't have a phone and I'm not planning to get one soon.
Well, let's hope he doesn't listen to this.
Exactly, please. I hope he doesn't listen to it either.
It is problematic, isn't it? And I suppose because he already has a tablet and uses that, then that probably takes the pressure away from the phone because it's a similar kind of device now. But
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's something that I think every parent and child has to deal with in some way. I remember when I was growing up, it was how much exposure I was allowed to have with television. So now
Exactly.
it's kind of changed, but
Exactly.
it's still another screen. It's another kind of thing
Yeah.
that you can let children have too much of. But I always remember, even as a teen, feeling a little bit left out because I had friends who would say that they watched TV quite late into the night and they were allowed to do that, and they were talking about
Okay.
programs that seemed so interesting, so adult to me, and I was kind of a bit envious that I wasn't allowed to watch TV. I can't remember up to what time, but I wasn't allowed to
Time.
watch the
Okay.
TV there, and that was something. But I think there's no getting away from it. There'll always be something, and there'll
Mm-hmm.
always be restrictions that parents will have to put on these things, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Even the TV as well. There should also be restrictions with, how long the child spends in front of a TV.
Yeah,
So for me, I believe so much with the children engaging outdoors, no matter
yeah.
their age, to outdoor activities. It takes them off those gadgets, sitting down and just watching the television, except is something educational the child is learning, because you find out that there's some children that are visual learners. They learn a lot from the things that they see. So even at that as well, there should be restriction on how long that kind of learning or spending time on the screen. should be guarded.
Yeah. And looking at technology more general, what kind of role do you think technology should play in education? You've already mentioned that you have experience of children being given tablets and laptops to be used.
Yeah, it's beneficial for education, but it should come with a lot of guidance and regulations to that, especially if, I mean, when it comes to technology, most of the things that the children do are online, so they are exposed to the internet, which has a lot of things that children are not, supposed to, have access to. So it's something that even as an educator and as parents that, we should be able to use the needed safeguard that blocks all those kind of information coming into our children's feed while they are learning. Because I mean, with the internet now, you're able to access more information quicker on we still have libraries that people go to library to read, but we know that with the internet, you're able to access information faster. So even with a technology supporting learning, it's great. It's a great and a fun way for children to learn, especially even children who could be struggling in some other ways of regularly sitting in the classroom to learn words or learn any subject. We have gaming activities that support those children in those areas of learning, which technology has been able to help us do that using their tablets or their laptops.
Yes, of course. Great. So, bringing things to a close now, Angelica, are there any other areas that you thought we would be talking about or that you'd like to mention that we haven't yet talked about?
Well, I think we've talked about everything, but I would also like to, encourage parents to really, really partner with their teachers, partner with their children's teachers, because we have their best interest at heart for their children, and to be able to share, really tell us, things that the children are struggling with. It will enable us to know the best way to support them, and also for parents to avail themselves the opportunity to attend, parents workshops and trainings to also support them in supporting their children as well.
Wonderful. So I'd just like to thank you, Angelica, for your time and sharing your knowledge in the way that you've done. I've really enjoyed talking to you about this, and I'm sure that all of the teachers listening will be grateful for all of the things that you've suggested and shared today. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well for having me, Graham. I'm really happy being here.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
And building on my conversation with Angelica, I would like to share some other ideas and advice for engaging parents and guardians. So, as we all know, parental engagement can significantly impact student success, creating a powerful educational partnership that supports learning at both school and home. And given this, I think it is known that when approached with a lot of thought, the collaboration with parents can benefit students, families, and educators alike. So, what are the foundations of this? Well, I think the first thing that needs to be taken into account are the potential obstacles or barriers to it. So many parents face practical constraints, of course, like inflexible work schedules, transportation challenges, childcare limitations, or even language barriers. And others can have emotional barriers from negative personal school experiences, or they can feel intimidated by educational settings. Some don't understand how to meaningfully participate in their child's education beyond basic involvement. This is all documented. It's interesting to read up about this, actually. So, apart from what Angelica and I talked about, what other effective engagement strategies are there? Well, we did talk about this, but it's worth expanding or establishing communication channels that are known to work. The communication channels that you decide to use with parents can form the cornerstone of engagement, but they have to be accessible to all families, of course. So, a multimodal approach that meets parents and guardians where they are, digital platforms for tech savvy families, paper communications for those with limited internet access, and translation services for multilingual communities. That's the ideal. And I think understanding more about the students, of course, and their situation at home can help you with deciding which channels to use or how to go about it. Then scheduling communication regularly, but judiciously to avoid overwhelming families is very important. You don't want to kind of spam them or have them feel that they're spamming them, but you do want them to feel that they're being kept in the loop and they understand exactly what is happening and they have the opportunity to connect as well, I think. So a teacher might combine a newsletter, digital or printed, a classroom app for quick updates, and text messaging for urgent information. Now, of course, this adds to the workload of teachers, so it needs to be considered very carefully whether this is something that you can take on, whether it's something you want to do. And also, you need to have the buy-in from your school, of course, from your school leaders, to see whether that is something that is possible to do as well. But the variety of communications ensures that all families would receive information through channels that work for their circumstances. One of the things that teachers can do is create opportunities for meaningful participation with parents so that they engage more deeply when their participation feels purposeful. So it's not just box ticking or going through the motions. And how do you do this? Well, designing diverse engagement opportunities that accommodate various schedules, interests, and comfort levels. This could involve traditional options like the parents' evenings or conferences, and perhaps in the school there are opportunities for parents to volunteer to do various things. But this should also and can also extend to flexible alternatives like recorded presentations, at home learning activities, or virtual participation options as well. Then authentic relationships with parents and guardians, whatever level of engagement you decide is worthwhile or that you want to have with parents and guardians, I think it needs to be genuine, and this genuine connection is something that can grow over time, I think. So begin the year, for example, with positive outreach before any academic or behavioral concerns may arise. You can learn about the family structures, cultural backgrounds, and communication preferences. If there's a meeting with the parents, you get to know them straight away. You can make personal connections by acknowledging any family milestones and celebrating the achievements of the students. When issues do arise, you can approach the conversations as collaborative problem-solving opportunities rather than one-way directives. So I think that's always something that parents and guardians would appreciate. It's important to listen actively to parents' perspectives, which can often contain valuable insights about their children, things that you might not be aware of at the beginning, some things that perhaps are happening in their children's lives, which could be having an effect in the classroom, for example. And another idea is to cultivate parent agency and leadership. So the strongest engagement happens when parents move from participants to more of an active relationship, where they're partnering with the school, for example, and you can invite parents to share their expertise, their interests, and cultural knowledge in the classroom or in the school. Parent advisory committees can help with this, especially if they have decision-making authority. Workshops that build on parents' capacity to support learning at home, but avoid a deficit-based approach that assumes parents lack knowledge, are things that are worth looking into. A parent, for example, that works in, healthcare, in a hospital, for example, might lead something on community helpers. Some parent with carpentry skills could help with a class project, etc. And these contributions can validate parents' knowledge and enrich the curriculum. Now, with Angelica, we already talked a little bit about technology and how you can use that thoughtfully. But digital tools can definitely enhance engagement when used purposefully. In order to do that, you need to select platforms that prioritize accessibility, mobile-friendly options, for example, and if appropriate, ones with translation capabilities. And maintaining consistent organization of digital information can help families navigate any resources that you might be sharing with them easily. You can provide technical support for families and the assistance, accessing digital tools as well, if that's appropriate. Again, this seems to indicate that there's a lot of time needed. So it is something to take a lot of care with, or to think about very carefully before doing. You don't want to be taking on too much in an already very busy schedule. But these are just options, remember, and some of them may be of interest, or you think that they may be of value for you to become engaged with, particularly if you have certain circumstances or you work in a context where you think that actually having a much better relationship or engaging parents would have a great value on the student learning or on the relationship that the parents have with the school. Remember, any technology that you use should be thought of about supplementing, not replacing any relationship building. So a classroom app might facilitate daily communication, but personal conversations will still remain essential. You don't want them to think that they're just sort of automatically getting things that are generated without much thought as to what is being done. You also need to customize your approach. You can start with assessment, for example. You can find out what families' preferences are and their contributions before designing an engagement strategies. You can ask them, if you have the opportunity, how often, for example, they'd like to be contacted about their children's learning. Things like that are interesting to become involved in. You also need to be culturally responsive. So you have to consider how cultural backgrounds that you may have in your school district or area, etc., could influence families' expectations about appropriate involvement in education. Consistency is very important. So even when participation seems low, you can continue reaching out. Many parents are very busy and they may not respond, but they probably appreciate communication even when they can't respond back to you. You should track which strategies generate the most participation and adjust your approach accordingly. And if there are opportunities for you to ask for feedback, then you can do that as well, of course. And by viewing parents as essential educational partners and designing this flexible, meaningful engagement opportunities for this, you can build a supportive community that will enhance success of the students. And the most effective engagement strategies, it is known, honor the complex realities of family life while creating genuine opportunities for collaboration to service student learning. Now, what about something I mentioned during my conversation with Angelica, the open class? If you are interested in knowing more about that format and how you can go about setting one up to get the most out of it, here are some suggestions. So, the first thing to do is to set up an effective classroom observation experience. For when you come to setting up an effective classroom observation experience for parents, is you can invite the parents to observe your teaching, especially if, well, why would you want to do that? Well, because it gives them an opportunity that is very powerful to understand exactly what their child's educational experience is firsthand. And when thoughtfully designed, this type of observation can help parents really appreciate teaching methodologies, the content of the curriculum, and the classroom dynamics in ways that any other type of communication with parents, newsletters or meetings, simply can't convey. Now, you can organize that the best way, or one of the ways that was done where I worked, was actually just before, if appropriate, just before the parents' meeting. You can have the parents come in a bit earlier and observe the end of a class, probably not the whole of a class. How do you go about that? Well, I think the first thing you do when it comes to preparation is you need to establish clear objectives for the observation before going ahead. Are you primarily aiming to build parent understanding of teaching approaches? Are you trying to strengthen homeschool connections or showcase specific curriculum innovations? And whatever objective you have will shape a lot of the decisions about what the format is or focus is of this type of open class. You want to take into account very carefully the classroom environment, of course. You might have a large number of students. Do you have enough space for one or even two of each of the parents or guardians of your children coming and standing at the back of the class? So from both a physical and emotional perspective, you need to take that into account. You don't want this to backfire. That's the last thing you want to do. So the students also should feel comfortable about being observed, and the classroom needs to, as I mentioned, be able to accommodate additional adults. You can always limit the number of adults in the room if you have a small type of space or you don't want to disturb the learning. You can give the opportunity to the first 5 or 6, for example, whatever you think would be your classroom environment would be able to accommodate without having too many there. Now, I think some teachers I've heard find it helpful to practice having other adults or colleagues observe before inviting the parents. Of course, you need to be comfortable as a teacher having the parents in the room with you while you're teaching. And this can also allow students to become accustomed to the experience as well. You can prepare your students by explaining why the parents are visiting and what they can expect from this open class. Younger students might practice showing the visitors their work, for example. You can have the students engage with their own parents and guardians or others and explain what they're learning, while the older students might help develop observation guidelines or prepare brief introductions to units of study for the students, if appropriate in their own language, for example. Now, the observation format based on your teaching context and the parents' availability needs careful consideration. You can have a rotation where small groups of parents, 3 to 5, as I mentioned before, visit during specific time blocks throughout a week or a month. And this could ensure that the stability of the classroom is maintained while accommodating parents' schedules as well. Or you could have an open door period where parents can just drop in during designated hours over several days or weeks. This flexibility works well for parents with unpredictable schedules, but that definitely requires careful management to provide overcrowding. Now, Inviting parents to observe during specific classroom activities may be something you want to do. I don't know, during, for example, science classes or literature discussions or mathematical problem solving sessions. There's something you particularly want the parents to be aware of. That would be interesting, but requires a lot of planning in advance. You could also create a registration system that balances the kind of accessibility with classroom management needs, an online sign-up form that could help track expected visitors and prevent overcrowding, for example, and give time slots, the duration of the time slots, and any special instructions that way. You can develop observation guidelines so that the parents themselves understand better their role during the visit. So that might include telling them where to sit or stand during the observation, whether they'll have any interaction with students, whether that's appropriate or not, how they can ask questions without disrupting your instruction, and the expectations around confidentiality, of course, regarding other students. And it goes without saying that having some kind of instruction or guidelines about photography or recording policies is worth doing as well. You can't just assume that the parents will understand and abide by that. You can prepare an observation focus guide that helps parents notice important aspects of the learning environment. This might include questions like for them to think about while they're observing the class, like what skills are the students practicing during this lesson? How does the teacher support different aspects of the students' needs? What classroom routines do you notice? How do students demonstrate their understanding, etc.? It's worthwhile thinking about beginning with a brief orientation for parent observers. Now, it could be that if they're coming to part of a class, then someone else, school leader, or someone else outside the classroom can begin with a brief orientation for the parent observers and answer any questions that they might have, if that's appropriate. It could be that you provide a printed handout, or that the person who greets the parents before they go into the classroom has a quick conversation before they enter, explaining the learning objectives for the day's lesson and any context needed to understand the activities, etc. You might want to provide translation notes during various sequences, for example, a reference sheet explaining the stages of a writing workshop or the purpose behind a particular approach, especially if it differs from traditional methods. If possible, create opportunities for authentic student-parent interaction without disrupting the flow of the teaching. During the independent work time, for example, students might briefly explain their current projects to visiting parents, or you might build in structured share time at the end of the observation. It could be in plenary, for example, with the parents having the opportunity to ask the students or the teacher anything about what they've just observed. You could have a debriefing component, if possible, where parents can ask questions after the class about what they observed. This might be appropriate if there's a time after class and before the parents' evening where the parents have the opportunity to talk to the teachers, for example. It could be a brief conversation immediately following the observation, or a follow-up email, in fact, if that isn't possible, with reflection prompts and an invitation to share questions. Now, what about virtual alternatives? Well, for parents unable to attend in person, you could consider a parallel virtual observation opportunity. Obviously, you need to get lots of permission for this in place, but live streaming selected lessons with parent-only access is an approach that you might want to offer. This requires definite attention to privacy considerations and technology, of course, but it can dramatically increase accessibility. You could have lesson segments that are recorded that can showcase particular instructional approaches or student learning activities. And this could focus on how you introduce new concepts or facilitate discussions or provide differentiated support. You can have student-created classroom tours where students record explanations of classroom learning or projects in progress or resources, and these recordings can be shared with parents who can't observe in person. As a follow-up, it's worthwhile gathering feedback from the parents and students about the experience. What did they find most valuable? What questions remain? How did their students feel about having the observers? And this information can help refine future observation opportunities. And you can connect these observations to broader engagement by suggesting ways that parents can support current learning at home. For example, after observation lesson, they might provide discussion questions. You might provide discussion questions that the parents can do to talk about books, for example, or something else that was part of the observation. It's also for you as a teacher to document the impact of the observations through some simple metrics, participation rates, any parent feedback, anything that is said or sent to you about the experience, any anecdotal evidence that you might observe yourself, changes in parent-teacher communication, student reflections, or engagement from the parents or guardians. And this can help you in the future as well. What about challenges? Well, privacy considerations, that they require very thoughtful planning. I mentioned that before. You might be exposed to a disruptive observation, and you can minimize this through the clear guidelines, as I suggested, and making it a very structured opportunity for parents to ask questions, etc. So think about that. So I do think that by thoughtfully designing parent observation opportunities, these open classes, that you can create a powerful window into the learning experiences and shape the student's educational journey. And these first-hand glimpses can foster deeper understanding and strong partnerships between home and school, ultimately benefiting student learning and development, and probably creating a much better experience for the parents and for you as the teacher, and the students definitely as well. So that brings us to the end of today's Sunday Lunch Show. Many thanks to Angelica for sharing her experiences and knowledge about engaging with parents, and to all of you who joined us live. Thank you also to anyone listening back to this recording. And this brings me to the end of today's show. And there are Teachers Talk radio shows all week on all manner of interesting topics, so please listen in live or to the recordings. And I hope you will join me again next week at the same time. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.